So this next 30 minutes, I'm going to be talking about the journey to the digital enterprises, which will be co-taught by CSC. So, sorry. So this is a very powerful statement that we've seen that our Andy Jassy, our Senior Vice President of Amazon Web Services, said during the last year reInvent. Cloud has become the new normal. What I mean here is cloud computing has become one of the biggest technological transformation that we are experiencing in the current lifetime. And it's growing at such a rapid pace now that everybody and every customer wants to try the cloud without having to think of what they have on the current on-prem infrastructure. We are expecting that the vast majority of the workloads will move to the cloud eventually in the next 5 to 10 years. As on date, as most of you are aware, we have over 1 million active customers leveraging Amazon Web Services in some form or the other. This includes customers of all sizes from all leading industry verticals. But, many customers do understand the value proposition of the cloud. But the biggest worry is whether to run a cloud on an on-premise infrastructure. They feel it's a binary choice. But the good news is, it's not. So what does hybrid IT have to do? So we understand that you or your customers have made significant investments in your current data centers or on-premise infrastructures and have a lot of data centers which are not due to retire yet. So what you exactly need is a capability to run AWS Cloud alongside your current infrastructure. We understand that. We've heard you. And we've made significant investments in the last few years, making these integrations seem simpler and easier for you to use AWS alongside with your infrastructure. So just to name a few, we have services like Amazon Virtual Cloud, Private Cloud, or VPC, which allows customers to create an isolated portion of the Amazon Cloud where you can extend your current on-premise data centers, treat that portion as an elastic data center, manage the resources in the AWS Cloud as you would manage them on-prem, using the same monitoring and management tools. We also have Direct Connect, which is a low-latency, high-speed network connectivity, something similar to MPLS or ADM or IPLC kind of stuff that gives for enterprises who needs that kind of dedicated connectivity. We also understand that enterprises, you kind of believe a lot of it's, we want to have the integration, single sign-on capability. We have services like Directory Services, which allows you to make the federation between your on-prem and the resources in the cloud, and also make this integration with single sign-on easily. And also, as you have a lot of role-based access control resources, you want to have a lot of fine-grained controls for resources to use in the cloud. We have services like Identity and Access Management, which allows you to do so. Not just that. As and when we see there are some specific customers who need specific regulatory controls for audit trail purposes, or customers who have a lot of governance, risk, and compliance, we do have services like Cloud Trial, which allows you to track every API call made into the AWS account, and the logs are delivered to your S3 bucket, which you can probably look at for your audit trail purposes. Config service, which is our newest offering, which is like a CMDB in the cloud, where you can probably look at the resources of every CI and track the dependencies. Not just that, we also have other services which makes your application lifecycle management to deploy the applications in the cloud much easily using some of our services like Code Deploy and OpsWorks, and also storage to move back and forth as well. We also have a lot of System Center plugins, like AWS Management Portal for vCenter and System Center, which seamlessly allows you to migrate your VMs from your on-prem to the cloud and vice versa. So, in a nutshell, what we're trying to say is like we understand that hybrid IT is a part of your journey and not destination. So, and this will be the case for a lot of customers in the years to come while you're moving your workloads to the cloud. Without no further delay, I would like to introduce one of our key partners here, CSC, who is a premier consulting partner, who are one of the largest IT services company, and they have pivoted their business successfully around AWS. To tell you more about it, it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage CTO of CSC, Mr. Daniel Angelucci.
So my name is Daniel Angelucci. I am the CTO for CSC. And it's a great pleasure to be here. Actually, one of the things I have to say, I love going to these AWS shows. It seems like, CTO, it sounds kind of like an interesting job, but I spend an awful lot of my time talking to other people who are selling IT, right? So one of the great parts about being in some place like this is to actually meet customers, people who are really using IT. These are the people that we really want to talk to, the people that excite us in terms of what it is that they're providing their customers. So sort of along those lines, I remember sort of an old joke that I guess I wanted to kind of throw out. So one software salesman once came to my building and she asked me, hey, do you know what the difference is between a software salesman and a used car salesman? And I said, no, I don't. And she said, well, a used car salesman knows he's lying. So, you know, as we talk about the software here, I want you to try to understand some of the technology that's behind it. I'm not trying to sell you a used car. This is stuff that is, in fact, in place and things that we are doing to help move the journey from enterprise IT in a traditional sense, in the four walls of your data center, off into something in the Amazon cloud. So what does that journey actually look like? Well, I have to say, it's a bit confusing at the start, right? So I think most of us are in a position where we're asking exactly the kind of questions that we see up here. So there's all these buzzwords, all this terminology that we're confronted with on a day-to-day basis in regards to our IT environment. So all of these things that we kind of think sound cool, all of these things that salesmen come in and tell us are good that we should be doing. But how is it that you actually take the practical values, the practical needs that you have within your organization and translate them into something meaningful? So how is it that you go from, I need to upgrade my infrastructure is outdated, to I need to become a digital enterprise? What does that actually look like? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and I think we're going to cover that by basically asking three questions. The first question is, why? Why is it we need to even talk about this? What's the importance of the question? The second is a little bit about how. And part of that is where I'll talk about CSC and what it is that we offer in order to help you along on that journey. And the last piece is who. So we'll talk a little bit about customers that I've encountered that are actually on this journey right now. So why? Why the digital enterprise? What is it that the digital enterprise does? And you know, I thought about entering into a long, extensive definition of what the digital enterprise actually is, but frankly, I think that's kind of boring and probably not something we're really interested in talking about. I think when we talk about the practical business value that's associated with something like the digital enterprise, what we're really talking about is organizations that have the opportunities in front of them and are able to seize those opportunities. So whether you're an Uber, whether you're a Redmart, you have the opportunity in front of you, you move fast enough to actually capture that opportunity. That's what a digital enterprise does better than anyone. Those opportunities that others miss are then captured, and that's how your organizations make money. That's the future. So the problem is, and I think this is the threat that all of my customers certainly face, is that if you don't do this, your competition is going to do it for you. So this is no longer an optional prospect. You have to begin moving in this direction. So to continue to answer the why question, I think this is probably my favorite slide. This is the one that appears in every one of my presentations, if you've ever seen them. So the question is, why is being agile important? Why is it important that we actually be able to move quickly? What is it the business value of that in an IT context? So if I'm a CIO, this is the chart I go to bed with every night. So the question, oh, by the way, you can see I stole it. Right? Just so everybody's aware. but so I think the question is, every project has a certain look to it, and that look is in terms of cash flow. So when the project begins, it's cash flow negative. The project goes live, and then it begins to receive the payback on the cash flow that you've already put into it, and eventually that turns around, and you reach a profit period. All right? So that's pretty standard. That's what every project really looks like. The key question is, how do we impact that as IT professionals? Those are the white arrows that you see. So everything that you hear, and hopefully from me, and hopefully from any vendor at this organization or at this meeting, is about moving those white arrows. That's what agility really means. It means moving that go live earlier, moving that payback period to an earlier time, and increasing the profit period that's associated with that particular service. So if somebody's telling you something that you can't draw onto that diagram, I would suggest that that's not really something that's helping your organization. This is the story that we need to tell. So in addition, and I think probably the piece that's driving people into Amazon, the Amazon Web Services, is this notion that not all of the creation of value that moves the arrows on that chart takes place within the four walls of our organization anymore. As we look around and we see things like open source, we see things like public cloud, we begin to understand that the value that we can create within our organization is no longer restricted by the physical boundaries of a data center or even the physical boundaries of that company. So we find a way to be an outside-in enterprise, to transfer the value that people are creating outside of that enterprise and actually monetize that within our organization. This is another key aspect that you'll see from a digital organization. This is the people who have found a way to offer what the best in the market is there. So this is how it is that they have leveraged what's out there in order to improve their business position. So I think that gives you at least a good sense of the why. Why is it important? It's important because we have to move those arrows. It's important because we have to find value outside of our organization. It's important because that's the value levers that our organization expect we as IT professionals to execute on. So now the kind of question is, okay, so now what, right? And I think I probably am asked that question more often from customers than any other single question. So you tell a good story, you point at your slides, and then they say, that's great. Now what? So this is a little bit about the now what. So the first thing is that most of our customers talk about cloud a lot, right? So nobody's in the dark about what cloud is anymore. We don't go in there and get questions like, what is cloud? Can you please define it for me? Which was sort of the snarky question from CIOs 2 years ago, right? We don't really get that so much anymore. Now, the question is, what's the journey really look like? And the journey to cloud is not the end of the journey, all right? I think it's really important to understand that you can get all of the aspects of cloud, the NIST definitions with multi-tenancy, network-defined, provisioned, on-demand, utility pricing. You can have all of that, and you still haven't moved those levers, those value levers. You haven't really affected those arrows back in the chart. So how is it you're going to go around affecting those arrows, right? How is it you're going to get to agile delivery, robust risk management, being future-enabled, being more profitable? These are the key pieces that we try to address as an organization. So what CSC offers in this space is what we call the Agility Platform. That's a cloud management platform that essentially is able to understand blueprints for your end-to-end services. So these blueprints then represent those services, whether they be running within your private cloud or within your traditional data center, or whether they begin to run within Amazon Web Services. So the ability to migrate those blueprints is the ability to take services that have been hosted in traditional data center environments and move them into the cloud, where you can use the multi-tenancy, the network delivered, the utility pricing to actually achieve a future-enabled, more profitable view of your services. So that's how we tell our companies they need to move forward. It's not about cloud. It's about what you do after that, how it is you execute on that. So the challenge then, as Vijay alluded to, is how is it you manage these hybrid IT infrastructures? So there's no easy way to say that as you begin to expand your estate outside of the four walls of your data center, that you can manage it very simply. It's just not possible, right? The fact is that when you take on a larger estate, even if that larger estate is logical, it has more moving parts and it becomes more complicated to handle. So we look at the Agility Platform as a tool that helps us actually manage that larger estate. So as the estate begins to expand, as we include Amazon Web Services in the portfolio, what we're able to do is leverage the value of the Agility Platform in order to give a single view of the organization as a hybrid organization. So that includes how it is that we manage and monitor these services, how it is that we do compliance in regards to these services, how it is that we do consolidated chargeback, how it is that we do enterprise blueprints. All of that is included within the tool. So let me give you just a quick example. So I used to work for a financial services company, and we used to have this problem every time that we would run a deployment. And this is in virtualized but traditional IT infrastructure. That is that the security team would come to us and they would say, we need to do penetration tests on every single server that we deploy. Now, they were kind of very worried about being penetrated, and with good justification, we were attacked quite frequently. But the question was, how is it that we could find a more efficient way to actually certify that this was a safe instance of the OS that we were producing? So when we implemented the Agility Platform, what we were then able to do is certify a blueprint. So that blueprint, again, is being consistently deployed, whether it be with Amazon Web Services or whether it be within your data center. So that consistent deployment from end to end in regards to that service allowed us to not run penetration tests on every single instance that we deployed. So the security notion, the governance around that is now about how is it that we can manage the blueprints rather than how is it that we can manage the instances. And that has real business value. How is it that you can deploy fast new services if it requires hundreds of servers and you have to run a penetration test against each one? There's a limit to what automation around penetration tests can deliver, right, as we soon discovered. So the ability for us to actually validate these blueprints showed real value in terms of being able to turn around the business faster. That moved that go live forward. It decreased that payback period. It increased that profit period. It moved all those arrows that really are a way to demonstrate what our value to the business is. So that's a little bit about the how. So the question that I think we want to dive into now is to make sure that I'm not trying to sell you a used car, right? So who is it? Who is it that's out there actually doing this in the field? So let me give you just a couple of examples in regards to CSC customers. I'm going to address 3 aspects in particular. One is about hybrid IT. So that's the first one that we'll talk about. The second, we're going to focus a little bit on governance. And then the third, and I think this will be really interesting, is about DevOps. That is certainly the word that I have heard the most at the CSC booth in the last few hours is DevOps. Everybody wants to talk about DevOps. I will try to show you how it is that our tool helps you move your organizational model toward DevOps. But first, let's talk about a large electronics manufacturer and how it is that they approached the problem. So they had a traditional IT data center. And I think everybody sort of fits somewhere on a continuum in regards to their data center about, is it empty or is it full, right? So you're somewhere in between. And the problem that a lot of organizations have is that they have to cost these services back to their particular lines of business, right? So they basically have a chargeback model. So that works fine, right, as long as you don't have any competition. As soon as you have competition, it becomes a bit of a nightmare, right? Especially if you have a traditional IT infrastructure. The fact is that the costs that are associated with the 4 walls that you build around your data center significantly impact your ability to deliver cheaply IT services. So if you have a server and you have only one in a data center that's built for 5,000, the cost of that data center is amortized over that single server, right? That gets expensive. And while an extreme example, even if a data center is 80% full, that means essentially you're holding 20% capacity. That overhead is, again, amortized over the cost of each server. So, in a traditional organization, this becomes a nightmare very quickly, right? So you have the 4 walls of your data center, and suddenly you're more costly. Your lines of business have the ability to go outside of your organization. Now you have fewer servers, and you get more expensive. And you sort of engage in this death spiral down into nowhere. So this organization really wanted to avoid that. So in order to do that, they reached a point where they were actually full in their data center, but they didn't want to just build another data center. So they were looking at how it is that they could implement the blueprints that they had put in place in their current data center, in their current infrastructure, and move that into Amazon Web Services. So those blueprints and the Agility platform allowed them to safely and completely take these services end to end into the cloud in a way that was replicatable and ensured the functionality of these services. So this isn't just about test and dev or any of the traditional cloud opportunities that we see. This is about moving real services into the cloud in a controlled way. So in the end, what this company was faced with was an opportunity, really, an opportunity to try to find the best balance of cost and risk that was associated with any individual service that they would deploy. So what's the best place to put it? The one that's the cheapest, right? So the other problem that we faced, and I alluded to it a little bit earlier, is around governance, right? So as we start to move into the cloud, I think a lot of our security folks are a little bit concerned. I think, and I've heard a lot about that actually today, is that the security conversation is becoming less aggressive. But I think it's still there. I think there are still some concerns around how it is that we execute for governance. So we at CSC have part of our Agility platform is that it manages policies, and these policies can be associated with containers. So, it has inheritance and all the nice object-oriented stuff. But what it really does is you're able to say, this is the deployment place that I want to put something, whether it be a network, whether it be a data center. These are the policies that then go along with that. In addition, you're able to associate the policies with blueprints. So that gives you a really interesting opportunity if you, say, want to decompose your application based on regulations that you may face. So imagine that you're an insurance company. Insurance companies have some very interesting regulations around data residence. Where is it that this data can actually sit? So there are no regulations, or very few regulations, around where the front end for these services actually sits. So you want to decompose your services in such a way that you can deploy it in an interesting way. You can have your blueprint representing the front end and your blueprint representing the data. Then when you deploy, you say to the blueprint here, the data blueprint, you cannot go to Amazon, but everything else can. And that assures you that you have control over your environment in terms of the regulations. This is all well logged and well understood by the application. So the ability to do this actually allows you to provide yourself more diversity in terms of where it is you want to place an application. Again, trying to find that cost-risk balance, find the right place for these things to sit. So who's using this? So there's a large public sector agency that has shall we say, some very interesting security requirements, right? And we were looking at them in terms of how it is that we wanted to deploy their cloud. So their governance policies are the basis for a lot of the discussions that we've had in the Agility platform about how best practices really look. So they are faced with regulation. They are faced with what's beyond regulation, sort of best practices that are associated with protecting these large sets of data. So how is it that we can actually put this to work? These policies are implemented at every level within that organization to ensure that this company efficiently, or this organization efficiently deploys their services, but also does so in a way that doesn't cause them problems with regulation, with citizens who are concerned about their data. This allows them, again, to push their IT organization into the future without having to worry about jeopardizing those value levers. They still continue to be able to show that service as being profitable, as being agile, and that has real value for we all as citizens. So the last piece. This is my favorite piece. I actually stole this slide from Amazon. But so the Agility platform enables DevOps, right? So how does it enable DevOps? One of the challenges that is around DevOps is how it is that you can modify software within existing environments, right? So there's a release management component, a component that plugs into GitHub, a part that plugs into Jenkins. What it allows you to do is to use those tools, and then it connects to those to actually download the latest set of code and move it into the various environments within your organization. So again, you have a blueprint. That blueprint represents your service. It also includes a deployment method. So then you want to move it from dev to test. So it goes from dev to test with a consistent blueprint, so you know it actually still represents the same hardware basis, the same service arrangement that you had earlier. And in fact, then it downloads the latest code and runs automated testing against it, hopefully, right? So the ability to do that means that you can go in one click from dev to test. Now you no longer need an operations team or a dev team or a build team that's going to actually sort of stand there and say, you know, where's your change request? Now your developers start to have the ability to move code into unit testing very quickly, very consistently, without any concerns about problems that they may have that this particular port isn't open on the firewall, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these opportunities are plenty. And then you can start to think about moving it into production. So again, you have an abstract version of that service that's part of these blueprints. You can move that into your production with one click. Downloads the latest code. And this is where continuous deployment starts to become an opportunity for your organization. So how fast can your organization move? It can move as fast as your developers can check in that code and make sure that it's properly tested. This is what DevOps to me is really all about. It's about that continuous delivery, and our tool helps to enable that. So we have an insurance company that was looking to do exactly this, to get their new services rolled out faster. And they use the Agility platform in exactly the way that I described, to move from dev to test to production with consistent blueprints. So this is a way that they can actually be more agile, that they can find those opportunities, again, that other organizations miss. And our platform is then designed to enhance the very DevOps principles that we've discussed. So just to recap, right, so we've got the binoculars, right? We're able to see the landscape of our IT organization, both in terms of the blueprints and in terms of the governance. I think that this is a really key factor in terms of how it is that we can go from our traditional IT to more of a hybrid model, how it is that we can move cloud into the future. So finally, what does this mean for your business? So this is sort of a good way of looking at how it is that you can pitch this to your internal organization. So when it comes to lines of business have different needs in regards to DevOps, in regards to cost savings in general, business cases. Some of them are about how is it that we can release more software? How is it that we can provide more features for our users? Some organizations are interested in taking cost out of their lines of business, right? But the real challenge is that it's rarely one or the other. It's sort of somewhere in between. Some lines of business are extremely innovative and require lots and lots of additional releases if you can get them, right? Some are sort of legacy stuff where we need to try to take as much cost out as we can. And some are probably somewhere in between. So I think of this as a sliding bar. The sliding bar you can put anywhere in order to demonstrate to the business value of this particular product, right, of this particular set of principles. So as you build the business case, what you're able to do is say, here is the opportunity that you, as a CIO, or as anyone in the IT organization, can offer. You offer the opportunity for cost savings, for additional releases, or for some combination of the two. And this is the part that usually sort of gets people excited, you don't have to decide. Your lines of business, the proper people for this sort of decision making, they get to make the decision. They can decide about how it is that they want to proceed in order to try to either save money, provide more services for their customers, and make a difference with those arrows. So in the end, this sliding bar slides to where the lines of business need it to be. It's a very business-centric view of how it is that we can move into the digital enterprise, the one that keeps in mind those value levers that we have, but also shows why it is that it's important that we understand our business and how it is that we add value to them. So AWS is a very important alliance partner for us. We go to market with AWS as our public cloud partner. So it's very important for us that AWS provides the best technology, which it does. It's very important to us that they provide the services that they do, because it allows IT organizations, again, to move into the digital enterprise, to move those value levers. We at CSC, we bring our market-leading knowledge of how it is that enterprises can actually sort of go forward on this journey, how it is that they can move those value levers. So we offer this as hybrid architecture. We hope that that's an interesting thing. We think it's definitely something that companies want to see right now. And we think that the Agility platform enhances our ability to go to our customers and show why it is that their IT is valuable and why CSC is a good partner for them. So the CSC AWS Alliance is all about returning value to our customers.